Hey guys, welcome to Kidmissing TV. As I mentioned last time, this is the case of a man who disappeared from West Point Military Academy in New York. He was born the 25th of July, 1928. His name was Richard Colvin Cox. He was last seen the 14th of January, 1950. He was a second-year cadet. He was visited by a man whose first name may have been George 3 times over the course of a week. On the third occasion, Cox and George left the grounds of the academy and were never seen again. He is the only West Point cadet to have ever disappeared without a trace. He was born in Mansfield, Ohio, the youngest of 6 children, to Rupert F. Cox and Minnie Colvin Cox. He had his mother's maiden name as a middle name, which was common back then. His father died when he was 10 of diabetes. Well, that makes sense, because when he was 10, it would have been 1938, and there wouldn't have been a lot of treatment for diabetes at that time. That had gone untreated because the Cox family were practicing Christian Scientists. His mother had a family business, the Rupert F. Cox Insurance Agency. Ow. Okay. He had a very bad scar on his arm because he fell on a scythe. That is it's a tool. He was working, but his mother, being a practicing Christian Scientist, would not get him attention. The wound became infected, and a neighbor brought him to a doctor, and he healed with a nasty scar. He joined the United States Army and the United States Constabulary, which carried out police occupation and security duties in Allied occupied Germany, and attained to the rank of sergeant. In May 1947, he began an assignment with Troop C, 6th Constabulary Squadron, based in Coburg in the American occupation zone of Germany. He was later assigned to the 6th Squadron's headquarters company, where he worked in the S2, or intelligence section. When they were disbanded, he was assigned to Troop D, the 27th Constabulary Squadron in Schweinfurt. He later, in 1947, received an appointment to West Point, and he arrived at the United States Military Academy Preparatory School, then located at Stewart Field in January of 1948. Oh, dang. Oh, I don't know what that is. I have no earthly idea what that is, guys, and we're going to ignore it. He was ranked for 100.
Angelina, we cannot come to the phone right now. Please leave us a message, including your phone number, and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, guys. What the heck? There we go. Sorry about that. At 4:45, Saturday, the 7th of January, 1950, a man telephoned Cox at West Point. A classmate, Peter Haynes, Hains, who was acting as charge of quarters in Cadet Company B2, part of the North Barracks, answered incoming calls to the company members. The tone was rough and patronizing, almost insulting, of the man, he said of the man on the phone. He told him Cox was not in his room, and the man replied, "Well, look, when he comes in, tell him to come on down here to the hotel. Just tell him George called. He'll know who I am. We knew each other in Germany." At 5:30, a man entered Grant's Hall. That's where he lived. It's an area where cadets could meet guests, and asked to see Cox. The cadet on duty there called him. The cadet described the man as slightly under 6 feet tall and weighing about 185 pounds, fair-haired, fair complexion, wore a belted trench coat, but no hat, which would be a big deal back then. I tend to take this description more seriously, and I'll tell you why. These guys are well trained and trained to notice things. He said he was going out to dinner with the man, but later he told his roommates in the dorm, "We didn't end up going out to dinner. We ended up drinking whiskey in his car and talking." When he came back, he signed the departure book showing he was back in, took a shower, and went to bed because he was drunk. Later that evening, Cox alerted the military time he had written in the departure book, changing 1923 to 1823, to make it look like he had attended the 630 Cadet Supper formation. In fact, he had skipped the formation. The detail, this was not discovered until 2 years later, when an agent of the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command had the departure book examined in a lab. In January 1950, Cox could have been charged with violating the Cadet Honor Code. The next morning, before attending the Sunday service, Cox mentioned his visit to his roommates. The man, Cox says, was a former U.S. Army Ranger who had served in the same unit as him in Germany. I'm not going to read you all of it. I'm just not. Now, it is believed that he may have been, let me find the suspect. Now, to me, it seems unlikely that oh, that's not a suspect. That's a potential someone who could have given him a false identification because he made false IDs. Anyway, here's what we know. Excuse me. He had told his roommates he didn't really like George, didn't like spending time with George. Some people don't believe that was George's name. And that he for whatever reason had to. Now, there are a couple of theories here I want to discuss. Theory number one is that he got no ID and left on his own, which at this point doesn't make sense because by now he would have contacted someone. Theory number two, although maybe he did, you can't totally take that off the table. Theory number two is that this George was recruiting him for the CIA. This was during the Cold War. It was during a time when um, spies were heavily active. And it wouldn't be unusual to recruit people, especially since he worked in the intelligence division when he was in Germany. So that certainly makes sense because he had experience in intelligence. Although I wouldn't think that the military would be looking for him because they would know. They wouldn't have the criminal investigation division looking for him if that were the case. They would be telling his family something, you know. Not that he was in the CIA, but they would come up with something to not have to investigate. But again, you can't completely rule it out. I think, are there any other possible theories? Well, yeah, foul play, I guess. This George person could have murdered him. Or could roommates of his or other cadets used this George as an excuse because they committed some sort of foul play on him, killing him? Very possible. So, those are 3 theories. Tell me which theory you think is most likely in the comments. Thank you for joining me. I do not have a phone number in this case. I do not believe. Let me check way back here. At the back of the case. Well, that's interesting. According to one man in the mid-1990s who was a retired CIA official, he did not name Cox. According to a retired CIA official he did not name, Cox became a part of a stay-behind team in Europe and spent his career smuggling Russian nuclear scientists and other high-priority individuals out of the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries. This official further stated that Cox had retired in northern Idaho, but that at the time of the official's interview with Jacobs, Cox was hospitalized with a fatal illness at the National Institutes of Health. That's interesting. It lends more credence, I guess. Yeah, he even wrote to a woman about Russian activities, to inquire about Russian activities. So yeah, definitely a possibility. And actually a very good one, because a lot of those guys retire and change their name and live somewhere else. They wanted to get away from their families for whatever reason. Whoa! Excuse me. This case is interesting to me because Cox is one of my family names. It's my grandmother's maiden name. So, and there were some of them out west. So, it's possible his family is in some way related. If I find that out, I will update you. Um, for sure, I will update you. Ooh, that didn't sound right. If I find that out for sure, I will update you on it. Um, Again, we're trying to get to 500 subscribers by August 4th. Please subscribe if you're new. Please hit the bell. Thank you so much. Excuse me. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys.